Fireworks. In London, East Finchley High Road is closed northbound because the road's in a poor condition near Fortis Green. It's slow in Shepherd's Bush. There's a lane closed on Holland Park Avenue at the Hollands Park roundabout. That's because a coach has broken down. In Brixton, Stockwell Park Walk eastbound is blocked because of an accident where a car's hit the traffic lights at Stockwell Road. And in the West Midlands on the M42 southbound, there's a lane closed at Junction 4 for Shirley. That's because of debris on the road, so it's slow going past. LBC Travel. I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Good morning, everybody. Well, the war of words between Russia and the British government shows no sign of abating whatsoever. The Russian embassy now have requested a meeting with Boris Johnson, and they've said that their dealings with Britain over the issue have been utterly unsatisfactory, and in turn, have to say, Boris, in his article in the Sunday Times, is not particularly in the mood for compromise. He accuses Russia very much of an avalanche of lies and disinformation. He points out, of course, that whilst we don't actually know for certain that this Novichok was made in Russia, he does remind us that Putin in the past had said that traitors would kick the bucket. He also has quite a big go at an infantile Jeremy Corbyn, who he calls a useless idiot. So I'm asking you this morning whether you think that Boris, in his role as Foreign Secretary, should meet the Russian ambassador. And if you think, yep, that's the right thing to do, call me on 0345 6060 973. Or maybe you think, oh, no. If he did this, he'd be playing straight into the Russians' hands, in which case text to 84850. Maybe you think a meeting should have happened already. Tweet any views you've got using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. Watch us on Facebook and comment there too. But I'll tell you what we'll do. Before you answer the question of whether Boris, in his role as Foreign Secretary, should meet the Russian ambassador, why don't I ask somebody who I know is going to have an opinion on this, which is former Foreign Secretary Sir Malcolm Rifkin. Good morning, Sir Malcolm.
Good morning.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. One question that does interest me is, there was that interview on German television where Boris said it was categorical that this agent had been made in Russia, and there was a high degree of certainty from the Prime Minister on this, and she went to a European Council, and the British persuaded 29 other countries to join them in expelling Russian diplomats. Is it possible, just possible, that we might have jumped the gun on this?
No, I don't think it is possible, and I'll tell you why. I mean, first of all, let's be quite clear what's at stake. When Litvinenko was poisoned by the Russians 12 years ago, and we identified a guy called Lugovoy as being the person most likely who we wanted extradited, if he'd appeared in the British courts charged with murder, what the jury would have been told is you can't convict unless you're satisfied beyond reasonable doubt. Not 100%,
Yep.
but beyond reasonable doubt. So let's apply that test. And what we have at the moment, and it's quite clear from Porton Down, that they are absolutely certain that it was Novichok, the Russian nerve agent. It's only made in Russia. They themselves said only a state actor, by which they mean a government, could have produced this stuff. And it's a Russian spy who's being attempted murder. So, if it looks like an elephant and it behaves like an elephant, then you're pretty certain it is one,
Yeah, but it is possible, is it not, that this was not sanctioned by Putin, that it was somebody over whom he'd lost control. After all, this guy Skripal would have been seen by the people he worked with as a traitor, somebody that betrayed them. Is there not a possibility this could be revenge?
If that was at all likely to be the true explanation, one would have expected a responsible government, if that's what Putin represents. Immediately this all broke to say, we are as horrified as the United Kingdom if Novichok has been used to attempt a murder of these people. We will make immediate inquiries as to what we can find out from our intelligence agencies. We will want to work with the British government. And instead, in fact, they did what they've done on every single occasion. They've been found with their fingers in the till. Do you remember, for example, as I'm sure your listeners will, when they were expelled from the Winter Olympics for cheating?
Yep.
They didn't admit it. They continued to deny it and pretended all sorts of explanations. When we had the Malaysian airliner brought down, 300 ordinary innocent people killed because of a missile fired by some of their friends in Ukraine. It was proven to be Russian equipment. They denied it in exactly the way they're doing at the moment. And when they actually annexed Crimea, and we all saw guys in military uniforms, they denied they were Russian troops. Ultimately, they admitted it several months later. So this is exactly what they do on every occasion, because basically they have stopped being a responsible government, and now Putin and his colleagues behave like a bunch of gangsters.
Do you think that our foreign policy with regards to Ukraine, namely that both NATO and the European Union have sought to extend eastwards to take the Ukraine into both of those organisations, do you think in a way that may have been a mistake?
Well,
could we just perhaps have been slightly provocative towards a Russia that seems to me a pretty paranoid country?
Well, let me correct you in one respect, if I may. NATO has never invited Ukraine to join NATO. The European Union is a different situation where you can apply. If you meet criteria over a number of years, you can gradually be brought into membership. But there were people in NATO, and there were governments originally attracted by the idea, and the Ukrainians wanted to join NATO. But that's never been offered and isn't going to be offered.
I mean, David Cameron and George Osborne were probably the most outspoken
Well, I
supporters.
disagreed with them when they said that. And I'm a great supporter of Ukraine. In fact, I'm going to Kiev in a few days' time, speaking at a conference in Ukraine. So I strongly support Ukraine, but I do not believe it should be a member of NATO. And I'll tell you why. Same applied to Georgia. Joining NATO means that the existing countries of NATO, under Article 5 of the treaty, promise to use all means necessary to defend you. That means, in practice, we would have to go to war with Russia when they had annexed Crimea. There was never the slightest possibility of us actually starting a war with Russia over these issues, although we deeply disapprove of what they've done and have supported very tough financial and economic sanctions, which are hurting Putin in a very significant way. So you can't accept people into a military alliance unless ultimately you're prepared to go to war if their territory is endangered.
Yes. Now, Boris Johnson is pretty much in the hot seat at the moment. How do you think he should, and I'm asking my listeners, and they're going to be calling in this morning giving their view, but, the Russians say that the British government's behaviour has been utterly unsatisfactory, and perhaps, you can say they would say that, wouldn't they? What should Boris Johnson do? Should he meet the Russian ambassador or not?
I think the current Russian ambassador is probably the last person he should meet in any circumstances. When Mr. Skripal and his daughter were fighting for their lives, the current Russian ambassador in London was making jokes, was cracking jokes, was trying to sneer.
It was a bizarre performance,
It was a bizarre performance from an ambassador representing his government. Whatever he thought about the merits of the issue, these were two people, one an innocent woman who was not, even in her history, was not of a spy or anything of that kind. She was fighting for her life. Somebody had attempted to murder her. And therefore, even if he wanted to pretend it wasn't the Russian government, he behaved in a disgraceful way. So my short answer to your question is certainly not.
OK, well, if this ambassador is not the right person to meet, it would appear, would it not, with Russian jets sort of menacing British territory, and we've seen the Russian Navy coming down the channel. I mean, we're almost back to a Cold War, aren't we?
I understand why people sometimes suggest that. I don't actually think it's the case. Because for two reasons. I think the Cold War was a massive conflict between the West and the Soviet Union, and it was about whether communism would dominate the world. It was whether the Soviet Union, at that time it was a huge superpower of equal status to the United States. We're not in that territory now. I'd strongly disapprove of Putin, but he's not wanting to start a world war. It's the last thing he wants. Basically, Putin is an opportunist. His plan, what he tries to do, is step by step to recover territory or to achieve Russia's political ambitions in any way that will not actually ultimately lead to a military confrontation by the West. And you have to remember that Russia today is hugely weaker than the old Soviet Union was. I mean, in those days, the Soviet Union was much more important than China. China was a relatively backward country.
Yeah.
Today, it's China and the United States who are the two superpowers.
And I have to say, when we saw the Russian Navy coming down the channel, they looked pretty much like out-of-date rust buckets.
Well, they were out-of-date rust buckets, and that is exactly right. Because, let me just give you an example of what I mean by that. Our defence budget is about £40 billion a year. The Russians spend more. They spend about 60 billion. The United States is 600 billion.
I know.
You know, so the idea that Russia is in any way unequal to the United States, this is why Putin goes on about nuclear weapons all the time. The one thing that makes them look to the casual observer as if they're somehow equal to the United States is because they are a nuclear weapons superpower. They've got all the nuclear weapons left over from the Cold War, and that makes them able to use rhetoric that makes them seem tougher and more important than they actually are. Now, well, let me just correct myself in one respect. Russia always will deserve to be a very important country because of its history, its culture, its sheer size. It is a big, important country. All the more sad that it is run by an ex-KGB man who still thinks like an ex-KGB man.
Now, talking of nuclear buttons, a few months ago, Kim Jong-un talked about his ability at some point in time to have a nuclear button, and he got a response from an American president, a very unusual American president in many ways, who basically said, my button's bigger than yours, which led to a great deal of hilarity. But Trump's very overt and tough line with North Korea appears to lead to the potential of a meeting between the two men. Is that to be welcomed?
Well, I welcome the possibility of a meeting, but I think you are over-egging the pudding. I know you're a chum of Trump, so
well, I admit that.
I will forgive you. I will forgive. No one's perfect, so I will forgive you for that. But the single most important reason, in my view, why Kim Jong-un is talking about negotiation and possible denuclearization is not Mr. Trump or even the United States. It's actually China. What has become clear in some of the reports we've seen in the last couple of weeks is that although the Chinese publicly have not supported very tough sanctions against North Korea, in practice, the oil and gas which they normally supply, various other forms of support they give, have dried up completely in the February, where it's the last month for which we have trade records, and therefore they have put a huge squeeze. And that is why Kim Jong-un turned up in Beijing a week or so ago, trying to be constructive and helpful.
Well, I'll try one more time. Could it be that Trump's pressure has actually made those sanctions work?
Well, the only thing I will say I think Trump is a pretty ghastly president, so I'm not going to in any way suggest otherwise. However, for a man like Kim Jong-un, who relies on wild threats of starting nuclear wars, when he gets an American president using the same sort of rhetoric and sounding as volatile as he might be, that makes him nervous. It makes all of us nervous. It makes me worried when some of the things Trump says. But, when he talks about being big rocket man as opposed to little rocket man, and we will destroy you and all this sort of stuff.
Fire and fury.
Sure. Then obviously that creates a maximum volatility, which Kim Jong-un may very well have noticed. But I come back with the point that the single most important real reason is the massive squeeze on his economy from the Chinese. They share a border, and China, if it wanted to, could extinguish North Korea economically in about 48 hours.
And finally, we have just under a year to go until the expiration of Article 50. How is the British establishment, which you've been a part for many, many years, how is it...
So have you, Nigel.
I may have been an MEP, but I've never really been welcomed with open arms by the establishment. I mean, how is the establishment coping with Brexit?
Well, first of all, I never thought that I could actually go through a whole interview with Nigel Farage and the subject of Brexit not come up. And I just simply mentioned you're the guy who raised it, not me. So this is obviously a lifetime's obsession. When you say how are the establishment coping, in fact, the establishment, whatever you mean by the establishment, and you are one of them.
Well, there has been an attempt, hasn't there? We've seen Tony Blair and others attempting to push for a second referendum, but it's it's not going to happen, is it?
Sure, but Boris Johnson's part of the establishment. Michael Gove's part of the establishment. The establishment was as divided as the public as a whole. This is not an issue on which you can simply categorise the British public depending on their background. I remember in the last few days of the referendum campaign realising that your side might win when I had a former very senior military officer, whom I had known very well, telling me that he'd actually changed his mind and was now going to vote for Brexit. And I met people in the City of London who a few years ago would never have dreamt of doing so, were doing so. So there was clearly a sea change underway. And that is one of the things that is healthy, extraordinarily healthy about this country, is that not that we always get it right or always get it wrong, but ultimately a democratic decision was taken in the most proper way by millions upon millions of people going peacefully to the ballot box and deciding what they wanted, albeit by a narrow majority, deciding what they wanted the future of their country to be, and the government and what you call the establishment overwhelmingly respecting that decision.
Yeah, I think that's where we are, actually. I think those voices now that are calling for a second referendum, are calling for a rerun, are looking rather silly.
Look, we have a population of 50 million people. I mean, the fact that a few hundred people may be calling for that,
yes,
doesn't actually need people. You don't need to lie awake worrying at night.
No, I'm not. Don't worry. Well, Sir Malcolm Rifkin, thank you very much indeed for coming in, joining us this morning. And Sir Malcolm, very, very strong in putting together the pieces of the jigsaw. He's absolutely convinced that Russia are behind this poisoning and that the British government has got it right. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It is now 10:18.
LBC at the weekend. Majid Nawaz.
In a party in which anti-Semitism is rife, this kind of corruption, this kind of racism, seeping into the senior leadership levels of the party, what kind of leader does that make Jeremy Corbyn? To fail to act makes you a terrible leader.
Leading Britain's conversation. Majid Nawaz. Today from 12 on LBC.
Hey, Sarah, did you see our street in the Admiral ad last night?
Yeah, we're the inspiration for multi-cover insurance.
Car and home on one policy.
And another great deal for customers. But seriously, it's a lifesaver.
Oh, I know. I did my car, Rob's car and the house. It was multi-cover deals all round.
Ooh, that deserves a celebration. Cup of tea? Something stronger?
Multi-cover your home and cars at admiral.com.
OK, sorry. The morning commute. It's not so bad. But if you're one of millions that start the day with muscle or joint pain, all that stop-start can be a bit of a pain in the... Turn to Voltarol for targeted pain relief. We're experts in body pain, so whether it's osteoarthritis, joint pain, or you overdid it in the gym, we can help get you moving again. Shame it won't work for the M25. Voltarol, the UK's #1 selling pain relief gel.
Based on sales data, Voltarol MGLP contains diclofenac diethyl ammonium. Always read the label.
With breakdown cover from the AA, we'll do whatever it takes to make sure your big wheels keep on turning. Our mechanics usually fix your car within 30 minutes of arriving. Breakdown cover from the AA, because anything can happen.
When I was a kid here in Iceland, we were always playing football and we had big dreams. Iceland, go to the Euros, go to the World Cup, what a dream. But we never thought we could actually go there. The atmosphere at the games was non-existent. So we got together, we started to create this big support crew, which was called Tolvan, or the 12 men. We got the drums and created some chants, and the results started growing. At the Euros, something amazing happened. The Vikings came to Europe. We unleashed on them the famous Viking chant. It was a beautiful tournament. Just got great results, and everybody was rooting for Iceland. I'm really honored to be a part of Tolvan. I think we're doing a great job, and I think Iceland and the people are proud of us as well.
Yahoo Sport. Fan-fueled stories that matter.
What do you know about a SIP? That's a self-invested personal pension. If you were advised by a financial professional to move your pension into a SIP, it may have been missold. If you invested more than £20,000, you should talk to Money Redress right now. Text WIN to 80252. Money Redress are trusted claims experts who could help you win back tens of thousands in compensation. And it's no win, no fee. Reclaim your retirement income. Text WIN to 80252 now.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Well, Sir Malcolm Rifkin there was very clear. He did not think that Boris Johnson ought to have a meeting with the Russian ambassador on the basis of how the Russian ambassador behaved at that pretty bizarre press conference. Andy in St Albans says, great show, Nigel. What a shame Sir Malcolm can't replace Boris and have his old job back. Well, I have to say, Sir Malcolm is an extremely competent political performer. Lynn says, this Russian propaganda stunt is not convincing. We've woken to the lies. Anthea thinks thinks Boris is an embarrassment and makes me feel ashamed of a shambles of a government. Piers says, I have as much proof as you do, but I trust the word of 20 countries over Russia. Well, one element of this that I think has been completely overlooked is what has actually happened to the city of Salisbury, because whilst the poisoning, it looks like, took place on a door handle, the centre of Salisbury, an eatery and a pub have been very affected by this, and I dare say Salisbury itself has been affected by it. And joining me this morning is Matthew Dean, the leader of Salisbury City Council. Matthew, good morning.
Good morning from Salisbury, Nigel.
Now, the last time I saw Salisbury Centre really in the news was when Theresa May turned up, at your invitation, I believe, and she famously fist-bumped somebody in the crowd. But what is the situation in Market Square, Salisbury now?
I think we're just moving away from the first phase, which has been the police investigation, where a very large number of sites were cordoned off. Those sites are going to be handed back in the next week or so. And what we need to do now is to start moving back towards return towards normality. Salisbury very much is open for business. We need to get that message out to the world now.
Has this done a lot of damage to Salisbury's trade?
I think it has in the very short term. Leisure and tourism is very important to our city, and we certainly have had a few people that stayed away initially. We've taken some pretty bold, decisive action around free parking, free buses to welcome people into our city. And anecdotally, those measures have worked. We had a very busy day yesterday, and I'm hoping that we're going to see the same again today.
And how long, Matthew, will the free parking last for?
Until we think we need to, rescind it. It's an expensive, gesture. We make after all costs a net profit of about £200,000 a month. But our view is that this is a big investment, and we need to draw down from Wiltshire Council's reserves. We need to appeal to the central government for funding to help us get back to where we were before.
Well, maybe Matthew Dean, leader of Salisbury City Council, maybe in the medium to longer term, this has put Salisbury on the map in a very dramatic way. It could, in the long run, do you a favour, do you think?
Well, I'm not so sure about that. I mean, a police officer was very badly injured in the course of his duties.
Yep.
We have 2 more Russian nationals who are in hospital. I don't think anybody would have possibly wanted anything like this.
No, of course not.
What, of course, it has done is it has shown us the remarkable resilience that we are as a community. We're home to the British Army on Salisbury Plain now, with the Army rebasing from Germany. And we have Ported down on our doorstep. So I guess we were a little more resilient than perhaps other parts of the country could have been to an incident of this nature.
Yes. No, well, Matthew, look, I wish you very well for Salisbury. It is a beautiful market square. It's an amazing medieval city, cathedral. There's a lot to see there, and I wish you well for the future of Salisbury. Thank you very much indeed for coming on and joining us this morning. You see, I reckon some of those shopkeepers have probably had a pretty miserable few weeks. But it's free parking in Salisbury now, folks, so perhaps you can take advantage. So, the Russian embassy are saying that the way Britain has dealt with this has been utterly unsatisfactory. Boris, they want to meet you. But Boris says, no. All we've seen for the Russians, is an avalanche of lies and disinformation, and he's not inclined to meet at all. And Malcolm Rifkin doesn't think he should meet with this ambassador, though Malcolm Rifkin making it pretty clear he does not think that he doesn't like Putin, but he does not think that Putin at any stage wants to go to war with us. Let's go to Peter from Wimbledon. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Nigel. Nigel, I think it's a bit rich of you trying to sometimes criticise Jeremy Corbyn for being too kind of pro-aligned to Putin, because you yourself are well-known Putin apologist and sympathiser.
I haven't. One second. I haven't mentioned Jeremy Corbyn personally. I've given no comment on Corbyn at all this morning, have I?
Well, not this morning. I'm talking overall in general. I can't get through to you every time you speak about him, so I'm just taking the opportunity to make my point across to you that you and Corbyn are part of the same team. You are sympathisers and apologists for regime which murders people on British soil. And the thing is, not so long ago, you suggested that Theresa May should be flying to Putin to Moscow and hold talks with him, The thing is that So coming up all the time with this kind of suggestion that we somehow upset Putin by expanding NATO to the east.
Yep.
And it's what you don't understand, Nigel, is if it wasn't for Russian aggression against neighboring states, invasion, annexation of neighboring states like Georgia and Ukraine, those small countries on the east like Estonia, Latvia and others would not be seeking membership of NATO if that was the case. And for some reason, it's like blaming the rape victim for being raped because he's been dressed too provocatively, And at the end of the day, it's voluntarily membership of NATO. Those countries were not forced to join NATO by anyone.
No, but NATO needs to take strategic decisions, and I thought it was very interesting, Peter. And by the way, the idea of May meeting Putin, I'm all for world leaders meeting, absolutely, and particularly when relations are bad. The old Churchill maxim about George Orwell being better than war is undoubtedly right, and if May and Putin were to meet at a neutral location, whether that's Oslo or Reykjavik, I do think that would be a good idea. I'm not an apologist.
Well, they have met.
But they haven't had a summit over these recent crises, and if they did, that would not, in my view, be a bad thing.
Well, Nigel, the thing is, what happened is, the reason you're stressing all this, because what Putin does in playing into your own hands and your own political objectives, which is the stabilization of the West and breakup of European Union, breakup of NATO. And that is what Putin's trying to achieve, because Putin knows quite well he cannot deal with all the countries where they're standing collectively together. Once he breaks up their unity, then he can invade those countries.
Well,
he can deal with them one by one.
I tell you what, Peter, I tell you the one thing that is a threat to NATO, certainly not me, I'm a defender of it. The one thing that is a threat to NATO is a European army. And that is something that Mr Juncker and co are desperately keen to build. And I worry genuinely about that. But I do think, it was very interesting, Peter. Malcolm Rifkind, was making the point a few minutes ago that the desire for the European Union to go into the Ukraine, he was very clear that was a mistake, and he thought it was unthinkable that NATO should seek to go in that direction as well.
Well, that may be unthinkable, but what you have to realize, you and Michael Rifkin, is it's not up to you or anyone else to decide the future of Ukrainian people themselves. And it's not up to Putin to go around and invade the country and cause the war, which is, we have 10,000 people died so far till now. And you're kind of blaming, again, you're blaming Ukrainian people who want to get away from Putin. They want to be the country which is run by people like Putin.
Peter, even if the Ukraine wanted to join NATO, that doesn't mean, from NATO's perspective, it'd be a very bright thing to do.
Well, whatever NATO perspectives are, it's irrelevant. The thing is that Putin invaded the country, started the war for the reason that those people don't want to be aligned with him. And what I'm trying to say to you again, Nigel, is it's not up to Putin, it's not up to NATO, it's up to Ukrainian people to decide where they want to live. And they want to live in democratic states like we are living and you're living, enjoying the freedoms people enjoy in this country, in the Western world, not like living in Russia where you can be shot, killed, or poisoned with a polonium as such, And the thing is, the other aspect of this matter is the difference between Russia and the West is this, whatever happens, like MH17 was shot down, the West or airplanes, America shot down an Iranian airplane not so long ago, and they have apologized, they pay compensation to the people and stuff. Russia will never admit to anything, and the reason they do that, because if they admit to anything they've committed, they will be liable for the compensation, so on and so on. So Putin, the way of defence is denial. No.
Well, Peter, that's fine. Let me ask you very quickly before we end this call, should Boris Johnson meet the Russian ambassador?
Well, to be honest, it's not up to me to decide. It's up to Boris Johnson.
No, I'm asking you. What do you think?
You can't negotiate with people who spread lies, who use propaganda.
So I'll take that, Peter, as a no. Thank you. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. It's now 10:31 and time for the news with Amelia Cox.
The Syrian government is being accused of carrying out a chemical weapons attack, killing 70 people in western Syria. It denies being responsible. The Justice Secretary has said he takes responsibility for the row surrounding attempts to grant parole to the serial sex attacker John Warboys. David Gork has told The Sun on Sunday a review of how the parole board operates will see it become more transparent than it is now. The first candidate to stand in the SNP deputy leader race has withdrawn from the contest. Glasgow Cathcart MSP James Dornan said he wants to devote more time to starting a campaign to combat sectarianism. 3 candidates are now vying to become Nicola Sturgeon's second in command. LBC weather: cloudy with rain for central, southern and eastern England, as well as northernmost parts of Scotland. Elsewhere there'll be sunshine and scattered showers, bright at times in the far southeast of England, a high of 10 degrees.
LBC travel on the M23 northbound. It's slow after a car broke down earlier on between junction 9 for Gatwick Airport and the M25 junction 7. All the lanes are now open. On the M25 clockwise, it's slow towards junction 15 for the M4 because there's an abnormal load on the move. In East Finchley in London, the high road is closed northbound because the road's in a poor condition near Fortis Green. In the West Midlands, on the M42 southbound, there's a lane closed at junction 4 for Shirley because of debris on the road. And on the tube, the Bakerloo line has severe delays between Stonebridge Park and Harrow and Wealdstone. That's because of a signal failure at Kenton. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC.
It's time. Time to join the millions of people that meet happy with Zoom video conferencing. With stunning HD video, crisp audio, and instant wireless sharing across any mobile, tablet, or desktop device. But the best thing about Zoom? It just works. So ditch the distractions, join the movement, and meet happy with Zoom video conferencing. Visit zoom.us to set up your free account today. That's zoom.us. Zoom video conferencing.
Flooring in need of a facelift? At B&Q we've over 100 price cuts across flooring, like Dolce Walnut Effect Laminate, down from £17 per square metre to just £15. So, if you're ready to kickstart your project, you can do it when you B&Q it. Dolce was £20.23, now £17.85 per pack.
What do you know about a SIP? That's a self-invested personal pension. If you were advised by a financial professional to move your pension into a SIP, it may have been missold. If you invested more than £20,000, you should talk to Money Redress right now. Text WIN to 80252. Money Redress are trusted claims experts who could help you win back tens of thousands in compensation. And it's no win, no fee. Reclaim your retirement income. Text WIN to 80252 now.
Do you own fine wines? Then have your collection valued by the experts at the London Wine Cellar. Whether you're looking to sell that special bottle that's been tucked away, a large investment portfolio, or to restructure your cellar, we're here to help. We'll buy your wines hassle-free with a nationwide collection service and immediate payment terms. So whether you're looking to sell your collection or just find out what it might be worth, talk to the specialists at thelondonwinecellar.com.
Admiral, welcome to the show.
My pleasure.
Now, there's been a lot of talk recently about your deals for home and car insurance.
You mean our multi-cover deals?
Yes, another insurance company saving us money?
Andrew, that's not us. We're different. Our car and home insurance customers can upgrade to multi-cover and get a great deal.
Car and home insurance on one policy?
Just go to admiral.com and see our multi-cover deals for yourself.
Get ready for a great tasting spring with the Sunday Times this weekend. Make entertaining easy with get-ahead recipes and discover London's hottest new restaurant, Brat. Learn why you'll soon be eating goat and look to the future as we investigate if technology is taking over our kitchens. Pick up your copy of the Sunday Times this weekend.
TDC Smile in a Day offers a permanent solution to the embarrassment and discomfort of dentures or loose and missing teeth.
Confident, proud of your smile, able to smile at a whim on the slightest pretext, enjoying the compliments of people saying, wow, your teeth look fantastic.
Book your free consultation today. Visit smileinaday.co.uk.
The Nigel Farage Show. Text 84850.
The Russian ambassador wants to meet Boris. He says Britain's dealings with this issue have been utterly unsatisfactory. The Foreign Secretary himself, Boris Johnson, in the Sunday Times, not looking to me to be in the mood to meet anybody, saying that the Russians have launched an avalanche of lies and disinformation. Before we get back to that question of whether that meeting ought to take place or not, front page of The Observer today, £50 million backing for new party to break the mould of UK politics. The talk is, for a couple of years, the plans have been there for a new centre party that would draw from right and left, that would try to break the mould of British politics. This is exactly the same language we heard with the SDP party back in 1981, and they did get the SDP a very large number of votes, but not enough to make the mould of British politics. And actually, I speak as somebody who in the entire history of British politics got the fewest seats for the most votes, So I know that breaking the mould of this system, given the electoral system we have, is very, very difficult indeed. I also think, even if £50 million was thrown at a new centre party that absorbed the Liberal Democrats into them, the thought of a new political party that effectively wanted to have a second referendum and reverse Brexit, it's not going anywhere, folks. People have made their minds up. I mean, Malcolm Rifkin, who has been a long-time supporter of the European project, it's pretty clear from his talk today. He accepts it. We've made a decision. We get on with it. And in his view, just a few hundred people aren't going to change things. So, it sounds like a fantastic story. It sounds like something amazing is about to happen in British politics. I would suggest none of you get too terribly excited about it. Of course, they'd need a leader as well, wouldn't they? Oh, I know. Tony Blair. There we are. Back to, should this meeting take place between Boris and the Russian ambassador? I'm going to ask Charles in Hemel Hempstead that very question. Good morning, Charles.
Good morning. No, if you encourage misfeasance, which means to lie, to prevaricate, to be dishonest, yeah, okay, you're just going to, continue with the crimes that they're going to commit. You should just block them and just leave them to fester. Yeah, we know what they're up. We know what they're up to. We know what they're about. Basically, that's the end of it. I don't think we should negotiate, talk to them or nothing until they come up with the truth.
So you would like the Russians to, own up, or, what do you expect them to do, Charles?
Well, look, listen, it's not the British people, it's not the Russian people, it's the politicians, isn't it? Without a doubt. So basically, what do you do? You just do exactly what the government's doing. Just block them, chuck them out, and say, look, we're not going to talk to you until you come clean.
So you are absolutely convinced, Charles, in your own mind, that it was the Russian government that did this?
Not the government. We don't know that.
No, we don't.
We know it's Russian. What I'm saying is that it could have been one of the idiots that worked for Putin that done it on his own back.
Yes, that's what I've thought again and again and again.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's what I think. It's a bit like Keir Starmer. Getting him to prosecute for criminal misconduct was a no-no because of his own behaviour. So you've got three avenues of criminal misconduct. Misfeasance, to lie.
I'll be a bit careful about Keir Starmer in that regard. But Charles, what do you think we should do then? Just nothing. Just sort of have a complete standoff between us and the Russians.
Pardon?
Should we now just have a standoff between us and Russia?
Yeah, just make their life intolerable until they come up clean.
Because Jeremy Corbyn has argued very strongly that whatever the situation, we have to maintain, decent conversations with Russia.
Decent conversations with Russia?
Well, namely that dialogue has to continue.
Jeremy Corbyn was the first one to go down to see the refugees at Calais. So basically, when our own people are homeless. So I would strongly say to Joe. In fact, I've got nobody to vote for now, Nigel.
Right.
Because of the situation, the Tories are just full of yes men. The Labour want to give it to anybody, and anybody doesn't work for it. The Liberals are useless as they've always been.
You sound really. It's a full cynical Charles on Sunday morning.
Resigned.
It's a full cynical Charles on Sunday morning. Charles, I thank you very much. Tina says, why would you not hold talks? It doesn't make any sense. Well, Tina, the question is, would you hold talks with this ambassador, or should, if there are going to be talks, it happen at a higher level? Tim says, if the Russians wanted the spy dead, they'd have done it years ago. Nigel, Russia is just playing a game. It's just a means of entertainment to them. We've seen it all before. In my opinion, we should ignore the rhetoric coming from the Kremlin and tell them nothing, says David. Boris should have steamed straight round to the Russian ambassador immediately, wanting answers. All the talking through the media is feeble, says Steve from Sutton. Actually, Steve, maybe what Boris should have done is not gone to the Russian embassy at the start of all this, but summoned the ambassador to come and see him. Now, that might have given some impression of who actually was leading this conversation. James is calling from Harlow. Good morning, James.
Hi, I don't think they're acting very professionally. We're meant to be a law-based country based on laws, right?
Yes.
But basically, every piece of evidence that it was the Russians is circumstantial. And we've been doing this for far too long. No jumping on some kind of the government tells us we've got to follow a mob mentality, so we all charge with the pitchforks at a certain country based on zero evidence. The gas...
Yeah, I mean, actually, to be honest, James, it's been a slightly embarrassing week for the Foreign Secretary, hasn't it? Because, there's this German TV interview. He says it's categorical. This stuff did come from Russia, and then the Portendown laboratory itself says...
Let me tell you something that's very relevant that no one's
that they can't prove it. Go on.
Let me tell you something. Hydrogen chloride, the gas is based on hydrogen chloride, right?
Yeah.
Well, they said to make it safely. That doesn't mean make it. It just means if you've got a country that doesn't give a damn if their people get hurt, they can still make that gas. In World War I, now all you need to do is update the facilities as long as you've got the basics. The Turkish had it. Turkey has for years been on about building the Ottoman Empire. I could argue that based on the last 10 years and what we've been seeing with terrorism and that, and their fact they want to rebuild the Ottoman Empire, actually having us at each other's throats, the Russians and the Brits and the Americans, is very much in Turkey's interest. Why ain't they on the charts? Why isn't France wants Brexit reversed? They could use that and they can produce a gas. Slim chance of granting you.
So, James, you are one of those people, James, and probably over a third of the population's in your camp at the moment. You want to see some more proof, yeah?
I want the government to follow the rule of law in Britain. I don't want proof. I want the law to be followed. The law is you do not jump on a bandwagon and blame a person. And yet we're doing that with the courts as well, blaming individuals with no proof. And now we're doing it with countries. Yep. When does it reach the point where someone says, this is insane, these people have got to go and something's got to be changed?
James, you make a fair point. We have... I wonder whether the British government didn't just jump the gun a little bit in all of this and convince other countries it had to be done because they had proof, and at the moment they're now struggling a little bit, and I think the Foreign Secretary is in a bit of trouble over this. I thank you very much indeed, James, for your call. Is it possible that Russia didn't think we knew about Novichok, says John. No, John, not possible at all. The Portendown laboratory, was all over the fact that Novichok did exist. Nigel, the real prejudice against Putin's Russia is because we don't defer to the globalist plan. Rogue elements were behind the Salisbury incident, says Terry in Worthing. Mr. Rifkin, unfortunately, will never state anything regarding Russia. All he can say is that they have done it before. The main argument from Boris and Theresa was that it definitely was Russia. This has now fallen apart. Yes, Malcolm Rifkin was saying that you could never prove beyond doubt in a court of law, given what we have before us, that it was Russia. But in his view, given history, it is likely, very strongly likely, to be them. I thought the other thing that he said today that was very interesting, is, and I've, ever since 2005, when I heard Cameron and Osborne saying that we should go in, take the Ukraine into the European Union and not stop the argument that perhaps that meant ultimately NATO too. And Malcolm Rifkin today was very clear, wasn't he, that he thought that was a mistake. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It is now 10:45.
This is LBC.
Some short-term loan companies charge over 1,200% APR, which is crazy. The good news is you can escape the APR madness at Fornovo.com, where we reckon we've got one of the best short-term loan deals going. Just text HAPPY to 66777 now and we'll give you a loan decision in under a minute. Representative APR 448%. Warning, late repayment can cause you serious money problems. For help, go to moneyadviceservice.org.uk. Fornovo.com. Your loan, your call.
The Mail on Sunday is Britain's best read Sunday paper with 3 superb supplements. This weekend in You, Britain's best loved women's magazine, single again Kylie Minogue insists that one day she'll be lucky in love. Gary Barlow reveals how his wife saved his life in our indispensable entertainment guide event. And our How to Beat the Taxman special could save you thousands of pounds every year. Plus, get a free will worth up to £135. Peace of mind for you and your family. Live life to the full with this weekend's Mail on Sunday. See newspaper for details. Offer excludes Scotland.
There's no telling what your dog will get up to next. Make sure they're protected with Pets in a Pickle pet insurance. Go to petsindapickle.co.uk.
At Boots Opticians, we're here to help you discover a stylish new look for less. We've got thousands of frames to choose from, so speak to us and together we'll find the perfect pair for you. In fact, with 2 pairs from £75, why stop at just one? Book in store or at boots.com. Boots, let's feel good 2 for £75 on Boots £50 glasses as part of our half-price additional pairs offer. Both pairs must be bought for the same customer in the same transaction. Subject to availability. See in store.
Right now, you can drive off with Aviva car insurance rated 5-star by de facto from just £176 a year. And should you need us, our claims line is open 24/7. Get a quote today direct from aviva.co.uk.
10% of customers paid £176 or less for our standard cover, November 2017 to January 2018. Priced individually.
TDC Smile in a Day offers a permanent solution to the embarrassment and discomfort of dentures or loose and missing teeth.
Confident, proud of your smile, able to smile at a whim on the slightest pretext, enjoying the compliments of people saying, wow, your teeth look fantastic.
Book your free consultation today. Visit smileinaday.co.uk.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
So the Russian ambassador wants a meeting with Boris Johnson because he says the way the Brits have behaved over this has been utterly unsatisfactory. But Boris, not really taking any prisoners and accusing the Russians of an avalanche of lies and disinformation. Should Boris meet the Russian ambassador? Paul in Enfield, I'm going to ask you that very question this morning. Hello.
Hi, Nigel. Nice to speak to you. I'd like to know what's going to happen to these fools that's supposed to be our government when it turns out this is a complete farce. The guy got sick on Sunday. Monday, they point the finger at Russia straight away. And it turns out it's a chemical that they don't have, but they have important down. I think it's an absolute nonsense. And also, Gavin Williamson. I mean, who else went for the job?
Oh, yes, his statements on that were quite extraordinary, weren't they?
Have you heard what he said to China about the South China Sea?
Go on.
He's going to send a frigate through the South China Sea to Australia because he's going to teach the Chinese a lesson about bullying neighbour states.
I have to say, Paul, that whenever I hear him speak, I think perhaps this fella's been a bit over-promoted.
That's what. And who else went for the job? It's unbelievable. And Theresa May has made so many bad decisions since she's been in, and this is another one. Also, it's interesting. This has come out after the Saudi prince who's come over because Donald Trump's bad guy, blah blah blah. Saudi's cool. We're selling 40 jets at £10 million a pop, and next thing we're having a go at Russia, who is stopping the war in Syria, and they're backing Assad. And they have this notion of regime change, which Clinton was insane about as well. They were thinking about they want regime change in Syria.
Paul, we've been pushing regime change for years in lots of countries in the world without a great degree of success. Paul, I think the problem here is, you are somebody who clearly doesn't think it's Russia that did it because it wasn't in their interests. But Malcolm Rifkind earlier thinks all the circumstantial evidence points to it being Russia, and his key point was that had it been a rogue actor that had done it, why did the Russians not condemn the act itself, in much clearer terms? But Paul, there are lots of questions here. Isn't the real problem here that probably we will never actually know the truth?
Oh, I think we will shortly.
Do you?
I think it's going to blow up in their face, and I don't know what's going to happen. What would be the consequences for a Prime Minister and a foreign secretary?
No, look. If the Prime Minister has convinced 29 countries around the world that we had the evidence, and on the back of that they expelled Russian diplomats, including Trump's administration, who expelled 60, and it turned out they had jumped the gun and got it wrong, I think the consequences are pretty obvious. They wouldn't be around for very long. But
I bet they will. They'll lie. Paul, you
got it both ways, can you? If it was proven that it wasn't the Russians that did it, they would be...
It can't be proven, can it?
Well, that's the point I'm making to you. I don't think we'll ever know the truth of this, but I understand, Paul, your scepticism, and I can assure you...
Nigel, can I say one thing, please?
Yeah.
When Ukraine was kicking off in February 2014, I was in Switzerland, and I was in a hotel, I was watching news channels, I was watching Al Jazeera. And at the time, the American diplomat had been caught by the Russians. Thought they'd tap on her phone, but she was caught discussing who they wanted to put in. She didn't care who the EU wanted to put in as president. They wanted so-and-so. And this came out. At the time, there was football hooligans kicking off riots everywhere. And then all of a sudden, the guys deposed. There's a government put into the Ukraine, and they're instantly recognised by the EU without any kind of vote or anything. And the whole story's believed. When I came back over here, the the angle, the prejudice on the news was unbelievable, because I believed that we actually had free news here, and it's not. It's completely biased.
Well, do you know, Paul, the truth about the Ukraine with that situation is that an elected leader of a country, he may have been corrupt, but an elected leader of a country was removed in a coup by people waving European Union flags. That is what happened.
Thank you.
Paul, thank you very much indeed. I must move on. We haven't had any proof, just a highly likely I get by text. We already know that Russia are working closely with Syria, a regime that is notorious for its alleged chemical weapons use. Would it be wrong to suggest maybe collusion between the two governments? Steve in Bristol, I've no idea about that. Nigel, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. However, the strongest concentration of this nerve agent was on the front door. It seems strange that nobody who was investigating this attack, and presumably walking in and out of that door, has been harmed. Perhaps I'm naive. It just sounds odd. Do you know, Matt from Sidcup, there are all sorts of different theories that abound on this, but I do increasingly think we will never, ever, ever really find out the truth. I wonder what Adam in Carrickfergus in Northern Ireland thinks. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Nigel. Nice to speak to you again. Yeah, I totally agree with your previous caller. I think the British government will get egg on their face with this whole story. I don't believe the British government at all, because I'll tell you why, Nigel. If I had, the evidence which we have so-called got, I'd be wanting a televised interview with the Russian government, and with the evidence I've got, I'd put it to them on live TV. I mean, surely if you had that much evidence, you'd want to produce it to the people you're accusing. Surely.
Right. So
I don't understand it.
So call the Russian ambassador's bluff, get him onto a major interview on the media, and get those questions put to him. Yeah.
And call out to him. It's to me, looking at this as a layman, a working class boy, to me, it looks like we're running scared. We're running scared because we called it out way too early. We've got all these, like you said just in the previous call, you've got all these countries to expel. All these Russians. And for what? It doesn't seem like we've got any evidence, and it looks like we are running scared now. And the Russians have, well, come on then. What have you got? If you had something, you go, well, that's what I've got. Explain yourself.
Adam, the one thing I would say to that, the Russian behaviour over all of this is very odd, isn't it?
The Russians, well...
I mean, that press conference.
Yeah, I did watch that, actually. And
what was that all about? What was that all about? I mean, it was like it was a sort of a stand-up comedy routine.
Yeah, it was a bit embarrassing for the Russians, I must admit. But then, that was embarrassing. Look at the way Boris Johnson's getting on. That's embarrassing for us. I mean, it's not stones. We live in a very, surrounded glass house.
There must be some Boris Johnson supporters out there. Somebody ring me up and tell me that Boris is doing a great job. 0345 6060 973, because you certainly haven't convinced Adam in Carrickfergus. Adam, thank you. Let's ask Glenn in Wellingborough what he makes of it all. Good morning, Glenn.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So, should Boris meet the ambassador?
Yes, it should have happened on the first day.
Yes.
The OPCW should have got them both together, sat them both down, done a full investigation, and nothing should have been released apart from we're having a full investigation, and that should have been the call. And the reason why they didn't, that I see it, is, which no one's talking about, is the connection between Skirple and Christopher Steele, who done the dodgy dossier on Trump, who is ex-MI6, and we all know how far the deep state is and what they're willing to do and how far they're willing to go. So are they doing it for a number of reasons? One, to cover up what Skirple could release about the deep state and what they're involved in, MI6, MI5, our government, and such alike.
So, Glenn, you're suggesting, just be clear about this. So, Glenn, you're suggesting that a British actor could well be responsible for this, yeah?
Yes, British deep state actor could definitely be involved in this for a number of reasons. One, for the dossier.
Can you imagine the risk, Glenn? Just think about this for a second. Can you imagine the risk of an official arm of the British Secret Service or government doing this?
Yes, I can. Look at what's happened in the past.
But do you think, Glenn, that our security services are efficient in what they do?
No. I'm for one agenda, and that's the demise of of everyone else. They work not for us or the security of us or the people. They work for the security of the politicians and such alike.
All right. No, Glenn, listen, you've given us your point of view. I thank you. I don't believe it possible. I suppose anything is possible. I don't believe it possible. I'm going to take one final view on this morning. I'm going to go to Philip, who is calling from Windsor. Good morning, Philip.
Morning, Nigel. I think we're going collectively mad here. We're willing to believe anything improbable or unlikely except what's staring us in the face. The Russians did it. There's no doubt about it. But I suppose the question is, should Boris be talking to the Russian ambassador?
Yeah.
At some stage he's going to have to. And I suppose the issue is what messages he's going to take. And basically he should be saying NATO stands firm on this and any other issues you may care to choose. The question is what happens to the Ukraine. Effectively we've given up, but thankfully Ukraine is not part of NATO, otherwise we'd be at war right now.
Yes, absolutely, Philip. And this is why I was so opposed to the eastward expansion of the European Union, with perhaps NATO following on. Absolutely. I'm very, very pleased about that. Philip, I hear what you say, and yours is the majority view, all right? Yours is the majority view, but there are a lot of questions being asked because of a lack of proof, because of a slight backtracking from Boris on the story. How do you feel, Philip, that Boris has performed as Foreign Secretary over this?
Well, I think he will be privy to information that we are not privy to. We have to recognise that, and we can't have MI6 or MI5, anybody sort of coming up on the 6 o'clock news saying, here's our evidence, because it gives away sources and all the rest of it.
There's some things we can't be told. No, I understand that. Philip, I'm out of time. I thank you. I thank all of the callers for your views. Still a lot of people not convinced. Most are, but a lot aren't. Now, moving on. Police cuts are not to blame for rising crime. The Home Secretary has told us that actually we've got the officers and we've got the funding to tackle the violence that is growing on Britain's streets. Writing in the Sunday Telegraph, Rudd says she's going to unveil a serious violence task force to face the problem, and says the time for warm words and political quarrels is over. As the Home Secretary unveils this serious violence task force, do you have confidence that the government actually will be able to tackle this escalation in violence? Call me on 0345 6060 973, text to 84850, and watch us on Facebook, because we're live from London next.
FM, online, on your mobile, and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, the Foreign Office has condemned the Assad regime following a suspected chemical weapons attack in western Syria, which has killed at least 70 people. A spokesperson has called on the regime and its backers, including Russia, to stop the violence against innocent civilians. The Syrian government denies being responsible for the attack in Douma in eastern Ghouta. Karim Shaheen is a Middle East reporter for The Guardian.
And the images, as you say, are absolutely horrible. We're seeing pictures of dead bodies, people who've been trapped in basements and bomb shelters where they've been hiding and where the gas has seeped in and suffocated entire families.
The Home Secretary is insisting there are enough police officers on Britain's streets following a rise in violent crime in London. Amber Rudd is announcing a series of measures to crack down on the issue, including restricting the sale of knives. Police officers will also be given extended powers to search people they suspect of carrying acid. The Foreign Secretary has called Russia's request for a meeting with him to discuss the nerve agent attack in Salisbury a diversionary tactic. Boris Johnson has hit out at the torrent of absurdity from Moscow following the poisoning of Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia. Former Foreign Secretary Sir Malcolm Rifkin has told Nigel Farage he thinks Mr Johnson is right to turn the ambassador's request down.
I think the current Russian ambassador is probably the last person he should meet in any circumstances. You know, when Mr Skripal and his daughter were fighting for their lives, the current Russian ambassador in London was making jokes, and therefore even if he wanted to pretend it wasn't the Russian government, he behaved in a disgraceful way. So my short answer to your question is certainly not.
German police are investigating why a man crashed a van into a crowd in Münster, killing 2 people before shooting himself. Authorities say he was a German national with no links to Islamist terrorism. A fire in Trump Tower in New York's left a man dead and several firefighters injured. Flames and black smoke were seen coming from windows on the 50th floor. President Trump has a home in the building in Manhattan, but was in Washington at the time. And Manchester City will have to wait to be crowned Premier League champions after a dramatic derby with Manchester United last night. They had been 2-0 up at half-time before United scored 3 goals in the second half. LBC weather: cloudy with rain for central, southern and eastern England, as well as northernmost parts of Scotland. Elsewhere there'll be sunshine and scattered showers, bright at times in the far southeast of England, a high of 10 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
Peugeot won the toughest rally in the world. But real life isn't rough terrain and shifting sand. It's the weekend escapes, the big shop, the school run. Real life. It's what we're made for. Experience our award-winning SUV range at the Peugeot SUV event between the 4th and 30th of April. And order a new Peugeot SUV during the event and get 2 free services. Participating dealers only. Terms and conditions apply. Visit Peugeot.co.uk.
LBC Travel on the M23 northbound. It's slow after a car broke down earlier on between junction 9 for Gatwick Airport and the M25 junction 7. All the lanes are now open. On the M25 in Hertfordshire, a lane stays closed in both directions between junction 24 for Potters Bar and junction 25 for the A10 for barrier repairs. It's slow in Shepherd's Bush. There's a lane closed on Holland Park Avenue westbound at the Holland Park roundabout. That's because a car's broken down. In West Yorkshire, it's slow on the M62 westbound. There's a lane closed on the exit slip road at junction 31 for Castleford. That's because of a car fire. And on the underground, the Bakerloo line has severe delays between Stonebridge Park and Harrow and Wheelston because of signal failure. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Well, the news last week that the murder rate in London had overtaken that of New York really got people to sit up and start to think. Not just this side of the pond either. I was on Fox News. I was in America last week, and they simply couldn't believe it. And they were asking me, what is going on in London? Well, we did debate that a couple of times last week on the Monday to Thursday show. But here we are. Violent crime rising, not just in London, it's happening. This is not purely a London story, it's happening in other parts of the country too. And I suppose, predictably, we get the government big response today. Amber Rudd writing a piece in the Sunday Telegraph. And what is she going to do? She's going to introduce an offensive weapons bill to restrict access to some of the most offensive and dangerous weapons. This includes certain kinds of knives and acid being sold to minors. She's come up with a serious violence strategy. So there you are. And she's told us it's nothing to do with cuts. It's nothing to do with police numbers. You know, she says a few years ago, police numbers were going up and violent crime rose at the same time. And she says, on stop and search, let me be crystal clear. I always get really worried when they say, let me be crystal clear. And she says, you know, it's a vital policy and officers will always have the government's full support to use these powers properly. Isn't that great? So everything's fine, folks. Nothing to worry about. We're going to have new legislation. We're going to have a new serious violence strategy group set up, and all will be fine. Oh, really? Well, Amber Rudd, let me be crystal clear with you that actually, under your boss, the Prime Minister, who, of course, was the longest-serving Home Secretary for 150 years, under her, stop and search fell by, wait for it, 80%. 80%! And the reason was that the ever politically correct Theresa May did not want it to be seen that possibly if police stop people in certain parts of London or elsewhere, that they could be thought to be racist. And I'm not making this up. I mean, Cressida Dick, who's the boss of the Metropolitan Police, said that in many cases, police are now afraid to conduct stop and search for fear of being, criticised or called racist. And I made the argument last week, I personally think, that actually political correctness is directly leading to an increase in the murder rate in London and possibly elsewhere. So, given this is what's going to happen, given that it's more legislation, do we really need more laws? Is Amber Rudd right that actually there are sufficient police on the streets? I want to know what you think. Do you have confidence that the government are going to be able to tackle this escalation in violence? And if you think perhaps setting up a new task force, bringing in new laws is the right approach, then call me on 0345 6060 973. Or maybe like me, you think it's a classic reaction to any of it, more legislation, more government quangos effectively, and that actually they're not really going to get to grips with it. Text me on 84850, and maybe you think that dropping stop and search by 80% over that period means, rather than blaming Sadiq Khan for all of this, and hey, the fact that he hasn't visited a crime site, the fact that he hasn't spoken to any of the families, I think is awful. But maybe actually the drop in stop and search on a Theresa May is one of the main reasons for this. Let me know what you think. You can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC and LBC, and of course you can watch us on Facebook and you can comment there too. So, there are, without doubt, there are real, genuine problems here. And I was quite alarmed, I have to say, and depressed by some of the phone calls that we took on Thursday, from young people living in boroughs in London where there's an increase in violence, who were coming on to my show and saying they themselves now might start carrying knives for fear that so many other people are. And indeed, we even had, didn't we, 6 stabbings that took place in London in the space of 90 minutes. Now, maybe one way in which this would be a good thing is that if her offensive weapons bill actually deals a little bit with punishments, because a lot of evidence that people at the moment who are caught carrying acid first time round simply get a warning. They're not actually charged, certainly not given a custodial sentence. That only happens on the second occasion that people are caught. And I do think that stop and search, I don't see, frankly, what other option we've got, because even if Amber Rudd is to introduce bans on certain types of knives, what use is that if there's no means of actually stopping and finding out whether people are carrying them? Is this good enough? Have you got confidence this government is going to tackle all of this? Mark is a new caller to this show from Hounslow, and I'm going to ask him that question. Good morning, Mark.
Oh, good morning, Nigel. Listen, it's very simple. The drug business, the cocaine business, is an estimated $2 billion a year.
Yep.
The drugs, and you take away the dealer's business. If they don't have a business, they don't have a job, they don't have gangs. It's as simple as that.
Right, so how do we take away their income?
Well, as I just said, legalise drugs.
Just legalise everything?
Absolutely, and then and do what you do with alcohol. It's the same as prohibition with Al Capone. You had gangs going around shooting each other in America. It's prohibition. If you don't legalise the drugs, you'll never learn. There's $2 billion a year in the hands of the criminals, in the hands of the gangs with the guns and the knives.
Yeah,
Legalise drugs. That's the end of it.
No, I know that I was in Colorado, Mark, last week for a couple of days, where, of course, they have legalised marijuana. Made me laugh. I was standing outside a building having a cigarette, and someone screamed at me as if I'd done something dreadful. I guess I should have been smoking a joint, and maybe then it would have been okay. I don't know. But I understand the argument about perhaps legalising marijuana. But is there a line you would draw, Mark? I mean, would you include Class A drugs? Would you include cocaine? Would you go as far as crack cocaine?
Well, cocaine, you can turn it into crack. Perhaps they should keep that illegal. Who knows? That's the most addictive substance. But people only start taking crack when their lives are all over. Cocaine is currently about, for a good gram of coke, it's about 80 quid on the streets. That business is in the hands of those kids running around in gangs. Take it away from them. If they close down LBC, you'd be out of a job. Take away the business.
Right. I'm not sure, Mark, I get the direct parallel there, but that's okay. No, so basically you legalise it, you licence it, you regulate it, and you sell it over the counter.
And you tax it. Think of the billions in tax.
Yeah. No, okay, Mark. But even if you did that, do you think that would literally eradicate gang culture in London today?
Well, more Well, less. You'd probably kill about 90% of it overnight, leaving the marijuana. But obviously, you'd have to legalise that as well. You know, it's obvious. There's nothing much more to it. It's exactly the same as prohibition in the 1920s.
Well, in a way, Amber Rudd does, in her article, identify this, because she says we need to shine a light on the drug trade, which is a key driver of rising violence. So she identifies a very similar problem to you, Mark. I'm absolutely certain she doesn't advocate the legalisation of any of it. But, Mark, you made a very, very interesting point, and I thank you for making it. And Mark's saying so much of this is all to do with crime and money, is about the drugs trade. And I know a lot of people do think that. Ashish is calling from Croydon. Good morning.
Yes, hello, good morning. I think there should be a two-pronged attack on this, and maybe a different approach.
Okay.
First of all, we need to satirise this Ali G disease, this Ali G culture, which a lot of not only black youth, but white youth and Asian youth are doing. I mean, I got nephews, and they went through a phase where when I'd take a picture of them, they used to put these finger signs up and go, yeah, West Side. I go, where the hell did you learn that? And they wanted to wear these baggy trousers which show their backside.
Yeah.
And, you know, they were talking like, you know, black gangsters. And I said, why are you acting like that? That's not you. You're just an Ali G. And I kept on calling them Ali G, and then they stopped doing it. You know, this Ali G disease...
Oh, well, maybe you've cracked it. I mean, there you are.
Well, we need to take the mick out of it, but there is another point. But we need to take the mick out of this Ali, because it's not only black kids and Indian kids who are born here. A lot of these new refugees are coming here. They obviously come in and settle, and then you start seeing them with their baseball caps and their baggy trousers and trying to talk like that. You know, we need to make fun of this Ali G disease before it infects everybody.
Okay,
That's
maybe worse than that, Ashish.
Yeah.
You know, have you listened to some of the lyrics of these rap records?
I have, because what it is, you have combination songs where you have a singer and a rap, and the singer sings so beautifully, and then you hear the rap go like he's having a go at his mum. You know what I mean? It's so stupid.
But I mean, some of the things that are advocated in these songs are pretty scary stuff, isn't it?
Well, they're just, you know what it is? It's immaturity. You know, they watch all these films like from New York. New York, right? And they just they all want to be. They want to act like black African Americans.
Right, so satirise them. Okay, and your second prong, Ashish.
Second point is...
You clearly are a radical in all of this, so I can't wait for this one.
Well, you've heard... We've talked about grooming gangs you in the past, so you must know that, you know, you've got to do something radical. Otherwise, these people who get these six-figured sums, you know, in the important positions trying to solve this problem, they're just a waste of money. You know what I mean? That's the first thing. The second thing is that, you know, if the government is afraid of doing stop and search increasingly of black youth, they need to say to these black youth, look, we are saving black lives.
Absolutely.
Black lives matter.
Yep.
Black lives matter.
Yep.
That's why we are...
Do you know what?
Because it's not white guys killing these black youth. It's not Asian guys. It's
Ashish,
black killing black.
If you look at the victims in London so far this year, you are absolutely right. The vast, vast majority of the victims are members of the ethnic communities. Ashish, great phone call. Thank you for that. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's now 11:15.
Sheila Fogarty, Monday to Friday from 1 p.m.
Shahid, it is not outrageous of me to state a fact. That mural is anti-Semitic. It doesn't matter whether you knew when you first saw it or not. It is.
Do you want to try and explain?
Well, yes, but I'm concerned that you seem to be wallowing in your ignorance.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
If you choose BT Infinity right now, you could make an epic saving of over £150. It's $29.99 a month, usually $35.99 on an 18-month contract. And get this, there's no activation fee, saving you £50. How does that sound? But you need to be pretty quick, because the sale ends on the 16th of April. Search BT Broadband. Be there. BT.
$9.99 delivery prices may change. $41.99 a month from month 19. New customers pay direct debit. Subject to availability and minimum line speed. Terms apply.
The Mail on Sunday is Britain's best read Sunday paper with 3 superb supplements. This weekend in You, Britain's best loved women's magazine, single again Kylie Minogue insists that one day she'll be lucky in love. Gary Barlow reveals how his wife saved his life in our indispensable entertainment guide event. And our How to Beat the Taxman special could save you thousands of pounds every year. Plus, get a free will worth up to £135. Peace of mind for you and your family. Live life to the full with this weekend's Mail on Sunday. See newspaper for details. Offer excludes Scotland.
At Boots Opticians, we're here to help you discover a stylish new look for less. We've got thousands of frames to choose from, so speak to us and together we'll find the perfect pair for you. In fact, with 2 pairs from £75, why stop at just one? Book in store or at boots.com. Boots, let's feel good. 2 for £75 on Boots £50 glasses as part of our half-price additional pairs offer. Both pairs must be bought for the same customer in the same transaction, subject to availability. See in store.
Oops! Spag bowl. But if you're one of millions that experience joint or muscle pain, even cooking can be a tall order, especially at the end of a long day. Turn to Voltarol for targeted pain relief. We're experts in body pain, so whether it's osteoarthritis, joint pain, or you overdid it in the gym or in the kitchen, we can help get you moving again. But it won't do the dishes. Voltarol, the UK's #1 selling pain relief gel.
Based on sales data, Voltarol Emigel-P contains diclofenac diethylammonium. Always read the label.
Right now, you can drive off with Aviva car insurance rated 5-star by de facto from just £176 a year. And should you need us, our claims line is open 24/7. Get a quote today, direct from aviva.co.uk.
10% of customers paid £176 or less for our standard cover, November 2017 to January 2018. Priced individually.
Welcome back to Little Spring Spotters.
As winter defrosts, we see the family's diet change from winter stodge to lighter options.
Like the Lighthouse Bay Norwegian side of salmon, just £11.99p a kilo.
What a catch.
Lidl, big on quality, little on price.
Subject to availability, NI may vary, selected stores.
Get ready for a great tasting spring with the Sunday Times this weekend. Make entertaining easy with get-ahead recipes and discover London's hottest new restaurant, Brat. Learn why you'll soon be eating goat and look to the future as we investigate if technology is taking over our kitchens. Pick up your copy of the Sunday Times this weekend.
At Homebase, there's 2 for £70 on Farrow and Ball 2.5 litre estate and modern emulsion paint. Offer ends Monday. Homebase, always your home, always low prices. In-store only, excludes clearance outlets.
Leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag #FarageOnLBC.
As the London murder rate overtakes that of New York and shocks everybody, we can rest assured it's all going to be okay because Amber Rudd has written an article in the Sunday Telegraph and there's going to be more legislation. Yes, there'll be an offensive weapons bill, but perhaps even more excitingly, there's going to be a serious violence strategy task force set up. So, there we are. It'll all be sorted. Oh, no, it won't. You know, and she goes on later in this article to say, let me be crystal clear. Oh, yeah. That she's saying stop and search is a vital policy tool and officers will always have the government's full support to use these powers properly. This from a Conservative government who, from 2010, under the stewardship of Theresa May as Home Secretary, have seen stop and search fall by 80% because they don't want anyone to say that they're being racist, despite the fact, as our previous caller made, most of the victims are black, so the argument for stop and search is that it will save black lives. But don't expect anyone like Amber Rudd to tread on turf like that. It's too awkward, too difficult, and much too embarrassing. Do you have confidence that a new task force and a new piece of legislation will deal with this problem? I do not. Piers says on Facebook, under Boris, London was safe. I think he's a terrible person and an atrocious foreign secretary, but he was a good mayor. Andy says, ex-army men should be paid good money to become police officers with guts to handle these morons who think they are gangsters. Rob says, more coppers doesn't cut the number of stabbings and murders. And this is a point that Amber Rudd makes. She says, none of this is because there are fewer police than there were a couple of decades ago, that it's not to do with budgets. She is saying, actually, you can have rising police and rising crime. Well, of course you can. But I don't know. Did you see in the week David Lammy from Tottenham saying that actually there simply weren't enough police on the streets, and to the embarrassment of the poor man, just as he was being filmed saying that, a policeman walked behind in shot of the camera. But Lammy was making a serious point that he didn't think police were visible enough on the streets of Tottenham, where a couple of those murders have taken place. Emily is calling from Hertford. Good morning, Emily.
Good morning, Nigel.
It's an honour to speak to you.
Well, that's very sweet of you. Now, do you think that we've got this cracked because Amber Rudd is setting up a serious violent strategy task force? Does that fill you with confidence to think that violent crime will be
Nigel, I've got no faith in this government whatsoever. No.
Really?
Yes. We need a leader like Trump or you.
How do you think
Trump... Anyway, I know that's not the topic of conversation, so what I'm going to say is basically there's a few bullet points here.
Yep.
First of all, we need to address the breakdown of the family unit in these communities, and we need to bring back national service. We need to legalise drugs, and with the stop and search, you need to just be able to stop whoever you want if there's any suspicion.
When are you, Emily, when are you running for Parliament?
Well, Nigel, I'd absolutely love to, but... unfortunately, I just don't have money to start my own campaign.
Right, well, there is a new party being set up with perhaps 50 million quid, and they're looking for new ideas, so you never know. Emily, listen, I'm taking the mickey a bit, but I do understand exactly what you're saying, that we do need to get a lot tougher. Do you know something? You know, Trump, you mentioned, but do you remember a guy called Rudy Giuliani?
No.
Right, and I know Rudy. Rudy Giuliani became mayor of New York in the late 1990s, and he pursued a brand new policing policy in New York, and it was called the broken windows theory. And what it was, if a street has got broken windows and graffiti and litter, there is more likely, because of the whole appearance of it, to attract bad people and to attract crime. So he dealt with problems in New York from the bottom up, by smartening the place up, by having community policing. He himself, as the mayor of New York, was seen out in these districts with the police, and he put in place a really tough policy. And you know, one man, as mayor of New York, radically transformed safety on the streets in New York. And Emily, it's called leadership. It's called real leadership.
You hit the nail on the head, Nigel.
You know,
hit the nail on the head.
And I frankly... we're not getting leadership from Sadiq Khan of any kind at all. And if the best Amber Rudd can do is to give us more legislation and a serious violent strategy task force, we're not going in the right direction, are we?
Absolutely not, Nigel. I'm sick of it. When are you coming back?
All we'll have to say about that, Emily. I'm watching Brexit very carefully. I'm watching it like a hawk. But no immediate desire to get back into the front line of politics. But
well, you're very much missed, Nigel. We all love you. And when you come back, I shall be signing up to join your party.
Right, very good, Emily. Thank you very much indeed. Well, there we are. I guess, you know, I do attract some supporters and some detractors. Hey, that's life, isn't it? Extra police will not get rid of knife crime. The trouble is, we all are becoming a want-it-straight-away society. And these people that do the crimes see on pop vids and films lots of money and fame, and in a sick way, that is what they want, says Ian. Ian, we had 2 phone calls on Thursday from people saying, actually, one of the reasons people do knifings, do stabbings, is it makes them famous. And it's very worrying, and Ian, you're right. And, you know, I'm being told that education is the answer, but hey, to get a fundamental change in behaviour through the education system is going to take 5 to 10 years. The question is, what do we do now? And it does seem to me that through political correctness and through cutting stop and search, we have made the problem worse, not better. Nigel, Amber Rudd is like the captain of the Titanic, rearranging the deck chairs, says Laura from Shenfield in Essex. I'm going to go to Ilford, to Zishan. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Nigel.
So, do you have more confidence than I do in Amber Rudd and the government in dealing with this rapid growth of violent crime?
The thing is, I don't think that's going to be dealt, Nigel. And I just want to make one point. The argument with regards to legalising drugs, that's a flawed argument, and we're not going to go into that. I just want to say 2 things, really, on that point. First point is this. I'm fed up when Telford happens, when something, you know, in London happens, this excuse of, oh, you know what, because we're going to be branded racist or because of political correctness, they don't do their job properly. I'm an Asian British, and I'm saying this, that these are just excuses. These are like excuses when I'm a teacher and, you know, kids come up, oh, that teacher's being racist, but it's in fact the kid not doing his job properly and just using an excuse. So what I want to say is this. If you're going to get a police force that isn't diverse enough, and what you get is 95% of the time a white male stop and searching an ethnic minority or someone from another area, of course the first scenario you're going to create is of, oh, are they being racist? Why haven't we made our force diverse enough, at least in London, so that this stigma is removed?
Well, they are trying. They are trying, Zishan, to make the force more diverse.
I don't think so, Nigel, because I'll tell you why. I was at a point training as a police cadet in my young days.
Yeah.
Now, when I was there, the kind of the way the force was, I didn't feel welcomed enough. And I'm telling you, I was a 16, 17-year-old who was absolutely passionate about joining the force. And I just didn't feel welcomed enough. And I mean, this is not going long back. This is going back to, 2009, which is not long back, you'd say.
No, it isn't.
It's not welcoming enough for ethnic minorities.
Zishan, can you just explain, I mean, you've made the point, can you explain in what way you didn't feel welcome?
Well, I mean, like I said, my experience there, it was, like I said, it's a bit hard to explain when you're down there and when you're sort of, I don't know if you remember, but around that time, there was a documentary by a journalist that was released, and he basically recorded the insides of the police force and how, it was institutionally racist. It was in 2006, 2007, a journalist had perpetrated the police force and issued, inside recordings of how the police may behave and what's the racism like inside the police. So that was really uncomfortable. And then to sort of see things when, I'll be honest, where a white male was preferred for certain opportunities when it came to representing the team at certain events, etc. I did feel that way, that the preference was white male, female, rather than...
So, Zishan, if the Met, I mean, we're talking London now, but hey, the same principle would apply to any big cities across the UK. If the Met was to employ, and not, on the basis of positive discrimination, but on merit, if the Met was to employ some really tough black police officers to go and deal with these gangs in no uncertain terms, the cry of racism couldn't be made, but would it help solve the problem?
I think it would. Reason why, Nigel, is because I personally feel if a youth was, and I've done youth work and I know how it works, to be honest, the way a black youth worker would approach a child and get information out of them, understanding, what the situation is, understanding maybe the cultural differences, even the language of the lingo that, you grow up with and you're kind of familiar with, common connections, they are a lot more effective. It's just like, the way we talk about terrorism.
Yeah.
It's a community project. Communities have to bring forward intelligence. Communities have to connect with people to get this resolved. Now, this is my point. If there was, let's say, on merit, a fair representation of black, Asian...
No. Zishan, listen, I've listened to what you have to say, and I think you may well be right. Maybe, in these areas where we've got real problems, an aggressive stop and search policy by a police force that representative of the area would be much, much tougher for the bad guys to criticise and condemn. And of course, it's the bad guys that will criticise and condemn because they want to go on running their gangs and running their illegal activities, and they will encourage everybody to use racism as an excuse. That is not a defence for, an 80% fall in the use of stop and search. That, in my opinion, is because of very weak, very gutless politicians. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. It is now 11:30, and time for the news with Amelia Cox.
At least 70 people, many of them children, have been killed in a suspected chemical weapons attack in western Syria. The Foreign Office is calling for an urgent investigation into the reports. Boris Johnson has accused the Kremlin of peddling an avalanche of lies and disinformation following the Salisbury nerve agent attack. The Foreign Secretary has called Russia's request for a meeting with him over it a diversionary tactic. Cabinet Ministers Amber Rudd and Sajid Javid say police cutbacks can't be blamed for an increase in violent crime. The government is introducing new measures to tackle the issue, including introducing restriction to knife sales and extended stop and search powers. LBC weather: cloudy with rain for central, southern and eastern England, as well as northernmost parts of Scotland. Elsewhere there'll be sunshine and scattered showers, bright at times in the far southeast of England, a high of 10 degrees.
LBC travel in Kent on the M25 clockwise. It's heavy because a van's broken down between junction 5 for the M26 and junction 6 for Godstone. It's now on the hard shoulder. On the M25 in Hertfordshire, a lane stays closed in both directions between junction 24 for Potters Bar and junction 25 for Enfield. That's for barrier repairs. The M23 northbound remains slow after a car broke down earlier on between junction 9 for Gatwick Airport and the M25 at junction 7. In East Finchley in London, the high road is closed northbound because the road's in a poor condition. That's near Fortis Green. And in the West Midlands, it's slow on the M42 southbound. There's a lane closed at junction 4 for Shirley. That's because of some debris on the road. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC.
Get ready for a great tasting spring with the Sunday Times this weekend. Make entertaining easy with get-ahead recipes and discover London's hottest new restaurant, Brat. Learn why you'll soon be eating goat and look to the future as we investigate if technology is taking over our kitchens. Pick up your copy of the Sunday Times this weekend.
Moving office is one of the most critical business decisions you will ever make. When designed, planned and managed well, it could reduce real estate costs, improve efficiency and increase profitability. Speak to Boris Interiors, who've been designing, fitting out and transforming workplaces for over 3 decades. Book your free consultation, attend a free seminar or get a free guidebook. Go to officerelocation.co.uk. Boris. Workplace Design Experts.
Hey, Sarah, did you see our street in the Admiral ad last night?
Yeah, we're the inspiration for multi-cover insurance.
Car and home on one policy.
And another great deal for customers. But seriously, it's a lifesaver.
Oh, I know. I did my car, Rob's car and the house. It was multi-cover deals all round.
Ooh, that deserves a celebration. Cup of tea? Something stronger.
Multi-cover your home and cars at admiral.com.
Have you seen that Change for Life? It's all about small changes we can do to make us healthier. Whether you and your family want to cut back fat, watch the salt, make sugar swaps, get your 5 a day or be more active, Change for Life has something for you. To find loads of easy everyday ideas, just search online for Change for Life. Now.
Energy bills weighing you down? Make light work of yours with Project Solar UK, a Which trusted trader installing solar panels that could save you hundreds on your energy bills and pay you back on energy you don't use. So for a greener wallet, text solar to 66777 and claim your government entitlement before it runs out. That's solar to 66777.
Sunshine every day. Project Solar UK.
At Homebase, there's 2 for £70 on Farrow and Ball 2.5 litre estate and modern emulsion paint. Offer ends Monday. Homebase, always your home, always low prices. In-store only, excludes clearance outlets.
The Mail on Sunday is Britain's best read Sunday paper with 3 superb supplements. This weekend in You, Britain's best loved women's magazine, single again Kylie Minogue insists that one day she'll be lucky in love. Gary Barlow reveals how his wife saved his life in our indispensable entertainment guide event. And our How to Beat the Taxman special could save you thousands of pounds every year. Plus, get a free will worth up to £135. Peace of mind for you and your family. Live life to the full with this weekend's Mail on Sunday. See newspaper for details. Offer excludes Scotland.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Has Amber Rudd convinced you that this government is going to tackle serious violent crime head-on and solve things by bringing in an offensive weapons bill and setting up a serious violence strategy task force? I'm not convinced, but perhaps I've got it wrong. Meanwhile, today, a rolling series of protests taking place around the United Kingdom. Milford Haven, Newcastle, Plymouth, Portsmouth, Hastings and Whitstable. This is being organised by Fishing for Leave. You'll remember their last protest outside the House of Commons on the River Thames, dumping back some over-quota haddock, which I gave them a hand with, and today they're protesting very strongly indeed. It isn't just our commercial fishermen, our anglers are protesting too, because under Brussels rules, they're not allowed to take a single bass home for tea. So this is an industry, both the pleasure angling and commercial fishing, that is in serious decline. And of course, the government has said, when we leave the European Union on March the 29th next year, nothing will change for at least 21 months. And the fishing industry and the coastal communities who voted Brexit by a big margin feel very badly let down, and they're angry. And I will myself be going along to Whitstable later on today to support the Kent fishermen's protest. Back to our subject. Andy is calling from Enfield. Andy, good morning.
Hi, Nigel. How are you?
I'm all right. So are you convinced that, that Amber Rudd has got the message and is now going to tackle this rise in violent crime head on?
Absolutely not. Amber Rudd doesn't have a clue. It's not so much as a lot of people say that the Met is incompetent or the police are incompetent, but that's not the case. You have to look at what their objectives really are. When it comes to, say, stopping something like hate crime or stopping someone like the recent case of stopping Martin Selner at the border, they're very effective. They're very effective. But it's just you have to see what their objectives really are. And if you think their objectives are solving crime, keeping the streets safe, that's a bunch of nonsense. Also, I'd just like to remark on the previous call. I think it was Shishan.
Yep.
Saying we need more
Zishan.
diverse.
Yep.
Yeah, Shishan. We need the police force, especially I think he was talking about the Met, to be more reflective of communities especially in London.
Yeah.
But we've already tried this. Like, even if you were to put, say, more Asian cops or, like you said, some tough black cops into the Met, then the people who are making these complaints, then they're just going to say, oh, they're just puppets. These people really don't have our interests at heart. They're just working for whoever, the white man, the establishment. And so they're still going to be complaining. I don't think we should be appeasing these people at all. I think what we need, like you said before, what we need is leadership. And what we need to do is take a tough line.
Yeah, I mean, this is, Andy, this is what Giuliani did in New York with very, very dramatic results. And your comments about hate crime, well, you know, in the past, the Metropolitan Police have championed very loudly the fact that they have 900 officers working on hate speech and hate crime. Yeah. And, Andy, to be fair, some of the hate speech and hate crime is pretty nasty stuff that does really upset, wound and offend people. But it is all about priorities, Andy, isn't it? And I would have thought people being stabbed in an increasing number was actually more important than some groups in society criticising and condemning others. That would certainly be my view. So, Andy, I'd back up your view, and I thank you very much indeed for your call. More police, I get on Twitter, won't stop the fact the youth have no respect for anyone in authority or even themselves. And Kate makes a point. She says, the stop and search was not intelligence-led. So out of 10 stops and search, only one was charged with an offence. Kate, I'm going to take that argument you've just made to me and turn it upside down and say, if for every 10 people that were stopped, one was carrying a knife, that's a hell of a good ratio. Hell of a good ratio. So, if you're right, Kate, with those numbers, I'd go for mass stop and search tomorrow morning all over London. I really, really would. Steve is calling from Islington. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Nigel. Nice to speak to you, mate. I think you've done the best thing for this country with Brexit for a long, long while.
Well, thank you for that. But I've solved nothing on knife crime, Steve, and I'm sort of thinking that our political leaders aren't doing enough to solve knife crime.
Honestly, Nigel,
I mean, come on. You know, when politicians announce more legislation and more groups and committees, we've got enough laws in place already. We've got a police force. You know, I just don't believe a word of it is going to improve anything, Steve.
Nigel, anyway, back to the guy before the news about employing more ethnic minorities.
Yes.
Honestly, mate, it doesn't work. I've seen instances myself in, say, like Hackney in Kingsland Road, when a black officer has been involved in an incident outside the station or whatever.
Yeah.
He's actually got stick from his own people, and white officers have had to step in to protect him. It doesn't work, Nigel. They won't accept it.
When you say they won't accept it, Steve, what precisely do you mean by that?
I mean, well, coloured people won't accept even their own people joining the police force. They just ostracise them.
Steve, it's not as bad as that, surely.
It is as bad as that, Nigel. I've seen it myself in Kingsland Road, which is a very populated coloured area. When a black officer has been involved in an incident, he has absolutely got slaughtered from his own people, and white officers have had to literally push him back to protect him.
So, if a white police officer conducts stop and search against somebody from the ethnic minorities, despite the fact ultimately it's the ethnic minorities themselves that are being protected by this, they get criticised. You're saying if a black police officer arrests somebody, he's going to get criticised. So, Steve, tell me something. What the hell do we do?
I don't know, mate, but what you just said earlier is I'm like you. I would absolutely stop and search right across the board.
Yep.
Absolutely. It's the only way, because all these people putting up excuses, it's not going to work. People are still going to get stabbed and shot.
Yeah. No, something's got to be done. Steve, I thank you for the call. Russ says to me via text, Amber Rudd, just a soundbite. There is sufficient legislation to deal with weapons. We have deals for gang-related matters. Some boroughs already have serious and violent crime units. She is just spouting what she thinks we want to hear. Russ, that gets it for me. I couldn't agree more. Nick is calling from Croydon. Good morning, Nick.
Hello, Nigel. Morning to you. Stop and search must be used, and those people in the media, in Parliament, in our government, who've been stopping stop and search, and I include MP David Lammy in this, should hold their hands in their heads in shame. David Lammy MP has recently, January this year, complained at Mayor Sadiq Khan about the amount of stop and search, particularly on black people within his area. As recently, Nigel, as January this year, referenced Google Online, Guardian Online via
all right, no, I believe you. I believe you. I know, no, Nick, I believe you. I believe you. So 1 minute, Lammy's criticising the police for stop and search. The next minute, he says there aren't enough police on the streets. That's your point about Lammy, yeah?
It is, yes, and it's pathetic. I mean, the media have got a role in this too. The media, particularly political media, should actually challenge these guys on this. But they come on TV and allowed to say this rubbish without any let or hindrance, challenge or argument. It's just not good enough. It encourages and excuses people for, frankly, bad, criminal, murderous activities on our streets.
There are some, Nick, who say... There are some who say that if there was a substantial increase in stop and search, it would lead to a widening gap between the ethnic communities and the police force. How would you respond to that?
What would those folks rather have? Dead people or hurt feelings? It's really that simple.
Well, I tell you what, you've put that beautifully. Nick, I thank you very much indeed for your call. Richard says an offensive weapons bill should include offensive music. I get the point, Richard, in terms of the lyrics in many of these songs. Surely the police should target the gang leaders. The rest would then fall apart, says David from Dartford. More support from Boris. Marjorie says on Twitter, Boris was a very good mayor for London, but he's a disaster as Foreign Secretary. Support for Boris. And an important point here that Vidal from Streatham is making. In the period that Theresa May reduced stop and search by 80%, violent crime dropped. So something else is going on here. Stop and search is not the reason why stabbings and shootings have increased. Right, OK. In the early years of Theresa May's tenure as Home Secretary, overall, national serious crime figures were coming down. For a brief period. They then started to rise. There has been, and, as I've said time and again, it's London at the moment we're talking about, but these principles can apply to any of the big cities across the United Kingdom. We have had a 40% increase in knife crime in London over the last 10 years, overlapping, not quite, but almost perfectly, with a period during which stop and search has been reduced by 80%. And as I say, I'm highly unimpressed by Sadiq Khan's leadership in this issue, but equally, we shouldn't forget the role Theresa May played in all of this, and that is just the truth. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:45.
Coming up at 12 on LBC, Majid Noirs.
Schools could stay open until 6 p.m. to protect children affected by gangs. Could this be part of the solution to solving Britain's gang crime epidemic?
Majid Noirs on LBC.
Welcome back to Little Spring Spotters.
As winter defrosts, we see the family's diet change from winter stodge to lighter options.
Like the Lighthouse Bay Norwegian side of salmon, just £11.99p a kilo.
What a catch.
Lidl, big on quality, little on price.
Subject to availability, NI may vary. Selected stores.
What do you know about a SIP? That's a self-invested personal pension. If you were advised by a financial professional to move your pension into a SIP, it may have been missold. If you invested more than £20,000, you should talk to Money Redress right now. Text WIN to 82344. Money Redress are trusted claims experts who could help you win back tens of thousands in compensation. And it's no win, no fee. Reclaim your retirement income. Text WIN to 82344 now.
Kickstarting your spring refresh. At B&Q, do it for less with Dulux 5-litre standard coloured emulsion, down from £26 to just £20. Dial brush set just £6.92 and roller set just £7. So for low prices on paint project essentials, you can do it when you B&Q it. Dulux Pure Brilliant White not included.
The Mail on Sunday is Britain's best read Sunday paper with 3 superb supplements. This weekend in You, Britain's best loved women's magazine, single again Kylie Minogue insists that one day she'll be lucky in love. Gary Barlow reveals how his wife saved his life in our indispensable entertainment guide event. And our How to Beat the Taxman special could save you thousands of pounds every year. Plus, get a free will worth up to £135. Peace of mind for you and your family. Live life to the full with this weekend's Mail on Sunday. See newspaper for details. Offer excludes Scotland.
There's no telling what your cat will get up to next. Make sure they're protected with Pets in a Pickle pet insurance. Go to petsinappickle.co.uk.
Right now, you can drive off with Aviva car insurance rated 5-star by de facto from just £176 a year. And should you need us, our claims line is open 24/7. Get a quote today direct from aviva.co.uk.
10% of customers paid £176 or less for our standard cover, November 2017 to January 2018. Priced individually.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's election day in Hungary today. Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister, seeking a third term in office. He is very, very likely to win a big chunk of the vote. And the far-right Jobbik Party, people who I saw turning up in the European Parliament in 2014 after their first few members were elected. And guess what? They turned up on day one in military uniforms. I'm not making it up. And they're likely to do pretty well in these elections too. And a very, very good piece by Robert Hardman in the Daily Mail yesterday, The New Schism, and it is a brilliant analysis, one with which I agree 100%. He says, forget Brexit. Fed up with mass immigration and being treated as populist morons by a bullying Brussels, the leaders of 4 countries are threatening to tear the EU asunder. And he's talking about the leaders of the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Poland and Hungary, the Visegrad group, as they're known. Indeed, Andrew Marr said not so long ago that the leaders of those 4 countries, when they talk about Brussels, make Nigel Farage sound like a Foreign Office diplomat. And perhaps one of the reasons, and Robert Hardman does point this out, one of the reasons why they are a complete nightmare from Brussels is none of them want to leave the European Union. No, they want to stay and destroy it from within. And it's really ironic in a way that Viktor Orban's Hungary is still in receipt of EU funds whilst at the same time condemning the place in language that I don't think I've ever used. So I tell you what, there are major, I do think that the EU actually is going through stages now of complete dislocation. That's a debate for another show. But let's see what those results are in Hungary today, and we'll certainly chat about them at 7 o'clock tomorrow night when I'm back here on LBC. Listening to @Nigel_Farage on @LBC, I find myself agreeing quite a bit with him, especially on Boris Johnson and crime in London, says Matt. Thank you, Matt. It's very good of you. Stop and search should be performed with body cam recording. Yes, then any complaints about the police could be reviewed. Peter in Lancing. Yes. They've got the technology, haven't they, within the hats or helmets for the whole thing to be recorded. I agree with you. And, you know, that is what needs to be done. I get also on text, if 1 in 10 are found with a weapon on them, then after 1,000 people are searched, that's 100 people caught, and that could mean 100 lives saved, says Nick. Yeah, Nick, as I say, when Kate earlier on said if this doesn't work, only 1 in 10 are carrying a knife, I thought, wow, 10% is a seriously big hit rate. Seamus is calling from Watford. Good morning, Seamus.
Yeah, hi, Nigel. Hi. I've listened to the debate, and I worked on the Tottenham High Road in the mid-90s, so I know the area.
Yes.
And what I would say is, and I remember the Cynthia Jarrett affair, I remember the Mark Duggan situation,
Yes.
and I think with this hardball Capone-style attack, which I think the Tories are going to impose now, and I could see it going off again. I could see riots going afoot, because what you'll probably end up seeing, and I'm only giving you my view, an oppressive white society versus disaffected black youth. And I do say with a heavy heart and a great element of foreboding, but I can just see it going off again.
So, okay. So you are concerned. I did put this argument earlier on. Didn't say I believed in it, but I did put this argument earlier on. You believe that if stop and search was to be significantly increased in these areas, that would lead to increased alienation.
Absolutely. I think you'll get the likes of, or you've got Lammy coming out and you've got Diane Abbott coming out, probably talking about getting more police on the street. But what will happen if they do come out, they start arresting people, probably rightfully so, and then there's some kind of kickback.
But Seamus,
chicken and egg situation, Nigel.
But Seamus, to willfully back off policing each area to as much as we can, equal standards, regardless whether they're areas of high ethnic communities or not. To start saying, oh, do you know what? That's an ethnic that's an ethnic minority area. 40% there are ethnic minorities. Let's not bother to police that too heavily in case we're criticised, whilst tolerating an increasing murder rate in that area. Wouldn't that be a complete abdication of responsibility?
Absolutely. I don't disagree with you, Nigel, but what I'm saying is I'm just telling you what I think may happen. So what I'm saying is they've got to have some kind of backup plan to deal with that situation if it does occur. It's chicken and egg. That's what I'm saying.
Sobering words, Seamus.
And then you could hark back, and I don't want to dwell on it, but that Robert Hardman article you talked about yesterday,
yes.
I read it myself.
Yes.
And you could talk about the deleterious effects of long-term mass unfettered unrestricted unrequested immigration. So I'm not saying I'm right, I'm just saying you potentially could make an argument on that point.
Well, none of us want to see the Brixton riots happen again. 1981 was a pretty scary time in South London.
Yeah.
And, of course, those riots took place in Bristol and Birmingham and many other parts of the UK as well. We don't want to go back to that. But, Seamus, I think the point that was made earlier, and one that I agree with, that actually stop and search would save black lives. And that's the argument the police and the government need to use, in my view.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm just saying that there might be some fallout.
Yeah, you've given us the warning, Seamus. I hear you. I very, very much hope you're wrong. But I thank you very much indeed for calling in. Morning, Nigel. In the 50s, I remember a copper on nearly every street corner. With fewer police. Well, yeah, but Mick, they weren't busy filling in form after form after form and wrapped up in bureaucracy. Perhaps they were able to actually do their jobs. If anybody was a policeman who's seen the change in that culture over the years, please call me on 0345 60 60 973. The problem is not stop and search and a lack of police or ethnic minority groups joining the police. It is the CPs who are not enforcing our knife laws. CPS, who are not enforcing our knife laws. We already have, says Louise. Louise, I don't think we need any more legislation. We got loads. Every time something appears to be a crisis, the government says, let's have more laws. Tell you what about enforcing the ones that we have at the moment? Catherine's calling from Stevenage. Good morning. No, I've lost her. Yvonne is calling from Beckley. Yvonne, hello.
Hi, good morning, Nigel.
Good morning.
I'm a first-time caller. I've never spoken to you before.
Well, welcome.
I am not in favour. Obviously, we know what's happening here is abhorrent. It's disgraceful. It's horrendous. However, I would like us to think about some of the causes of this situation. There's no justification for anyone walking around with a gun or a knife and shooting or killing or stabbing anyone. However, I think we're spending too much time thinking about how to crack this nut without looking at some of the causes and the effects. I think that is rooted in the young people feeling alienated, and this is not just ethnic minority people. I think young people in general are feeling that they are not part of this society. We do not have positive images of young people in the media. They're always portrayed as gang-loving, horrible music. I think we really need to think about how years of possible social exclusion, poverty, cutting in youth services has affected young people. They do not feel like they are part of the society. They feel alienated, and they've created their own subculture, which is abhorrent. And I think that we as a community, we want to build more prisons. We want to have another task force. We want to punish them. We want to make them suffer. We want to make them pay. We want to, yes, we should do stop and search. Yes, people should be paying if they commit heinous crimes. However, this is a multifaceted problem, and we need multifaceted approaches to dealing with it.
I don't disagree, Yvonne, with what you've said, but my problem is that dealing with the long-term causes of the alienation of segments of society and attempting that through the education system and everything else. The trouble is, Yvonne, all of that would take many, many years to actually get a decent result. And
I'm not suggesting that I appreciate that. Obviously, this situation did not occur overnight. This has been something that has been brewing. This is something that has been brewing for years, decades even.
Yeah.
So obviously, when you have a cancer doesn't. You just see the symptom of the cancer. You don't realise that maybe your poor eating habits, maybe your lifestyle has cultivated this cancer in you, and now you have a postulating boil and you want it to be cut out. Really, people have been taught, actually, if we look at our diet, if we look at our behaviours, if we look at the alcohol we drink, then maybe that's the way forward, and it's going to take years. But I just think alongside all of the other tactics, people who are in this entrenched, because a lot of the young people that I talk to, who I've worked with, they feel that they have no option but to carry a knife. They feel that they have
do you know, Yvonne, what really worried me last week were, the one particular call I had last week from somebody saying, knife crime is growing in my area. I've now decided I'm going to start carrying a knife to protect myself. And what I worry about, Yvonne, is this seems to be escalating.
Well, the thing is, we are not the young people. We are not the ones walking in the street. I work in an area in East London, in Forest Gate, where young people feel that if they do not arm themselves, they will become victims. Yeah. And it's okay for the powers that be to say, yes, stop and search, incarcerate them, but you might have some poor timid child who is frightened for his life, who is walking the street in fear of going from one postcode or from one street corner to another street corner, who may carry a knife out of fear.
I tell you what,
being incarcerated his whole career, his whole life put in a mire because he wanted to protect himself.
Yvonne, you've identified some real problems here, and that this escalation is what I fear. Dawn says, finally, I can remember being scared of the police. The police now appear the ones who are scared. You're not wrong. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm back tomorrow at 7. At 3 this afternoon, it's Andrew Castle. Up next, Majid Nawaz.
Thank you, Nigel. Coming up, comedian Ruby Wax has spoken out against the taboo surrounding antidepressants, and so I'm asking, are people on antidepressants stigmatised? Before that, a mother is prosecuting a doctor who circumcised her son on behalf of his father without her consent. It is a criminal offence to perform female genital mutilation, but should male circumcision also now be opened up for debate? But first, schools in London and other cities could stay open until 6 p.m. to protect children affected by gangs. Could this be part of the solution to solving Britain's gang crime epidemic?